I was standing in my own living room, listening to my husband scream that I should kill our son. Get an abortion. I don't want a child with you. Ethan's voice echoed off the walls of the house I'd been helping to pay off for 11 years. The words left his mouth like venom, each syllable loaded with a contempt I had never seen so clearly. The man who had sworn to love me until death stood before me, his face red with rage, ordering me to eliminate the life growing inside me. And beside him, sitting on the sofa, as if she owned the place, was my mother-in-law, Margaret, nodding in agreement, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Do what he says," she said. Her voice was calm, almost sweet, as if she were advising me on which brand of coffee to buy. "It's for the best." I felt tears streaming down my face, hot, heavy, carrying the weight of 11 years of humiliation, of silence, of swallowing my pride, thinking it was love. But in that moment, something inside me shifted. Something that had been waiting, gathering strength, collecting evidence, preparing in silence for 5 long years. I wiped the tears away with the back of my hand, took a deep breath, and smiled. "Don't worry," I said. My voice was steady, so steady it surprised even me. "This baby won't have your last name." I saw the confusion on Ethan's face. Margaret's smile faltered. I walked over to my purse in the corner of the room, pulled out a yellow manila folder, and when I opened it, when I showed them the document I had kept like a time bomb for years, I watched their world fall apart. But before I tell you what was in that folder, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to tell you how I became the woman who wiped away her tears and smiled at the man who told her to kill her own child. I need to tell you how I survived. My name is Grace. I'm 37 years old, and I was born in Red Rock, a small town in northern Arizona where the desert stretches out like a painted canvas. I grew up hearing my grandmother say that the desert wind carries everything away, sorrows, sadness, loves that didn't work out. All you had to do was release a flower to the wind and make a wish, and the desert would carry it to the sky, and the sky would make it real. I spent my whole life releasing flowers to the wind, asking for love, for happiness, asking for someone to see me, to value me, to truly love me. And when Ethan appeared in my life, I thought the wind had finally answered my prayers. How wrong I was. I was a public school teacher, teaching elementary school kids from 1st to 5th grade. The pay was low, the hours were long, but I loved what I did. I was 24 back in 2011 when I met Ethan at the Red Rock County Fair. The fair is the soul of our town. Every fall, the main square fills up with food stalls, live music, and carnival rides. The smell of roasted corn and funnel cakes hangs in the air. People dance until the sun comes up. I was with my friends near a barbecue stand when he approached. Ethan was 27. He worked as a technician on a large corporate farm in the region. He was tall, tan, with a smile that lit up his entire face. "Excuse me." He stood in front of me, holding something behind his back. "You're Grace, right? The teacher?" I was curious. He held out his hand. He was holding a book, a collection of poetry by Mary Oliver. "I heard you like to read." His eyes were bright with nervousness. "I wanted to impress you, so I bought this. I don't know if it's any good. I don't really get poetry, but the girl at the bookstore said this author is special." I took the book. My hands were trembling. "You bought me a book without even knowing me?" He blushed, running a hand through his hair in embarrassment. "Well, I see you drive past the farm every day on your way to school, and I've always wanted to talk to you, but I never had the nerve. So today, with the fair and all, I figured, it's now or never." I laughed, not a mocking laugh, but a charmed one. No one had ever done something like that for me. No man had ever taken the time to find out what I liked, to buy a thoughtful gift, to work up the courage to approach me. I fell in love right there at that county fair, under the colored lights, with the band playing in the background and the smell of cotton candy in the air. If I had known what was coming, I would have thrown that book to the wind along with the flowers. But I didn't know. No one ever does. You only find out who people really are when it's far too late. We dated for 2 years. 2 years I hold in my memory as the happiest of my life. Ethan would pick me up from school every day. He'd pull up on his motorcycle, honk the horn, and wait for me with that huge smile on his face. The other teachers were green with envy. "That boyfriend of yours is a real prince, Grace," they'd say. "Hold on to him for dear life." I held on with my hands, my heart, and my soul. I held on until there was nothing left of me to hold with. Ethan brought me flowers for no reason. He'd show up at my house with a bouquet of wildflowers, the kind that grow on the side of the highway. He'd say he pulled over just to pick them because they reminded him of me. He wrote little notes and hid them in my purse. I'd only find them when I got home and emptied my bag. Small scraps of paper with phrases that made my heart race. Grace, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you. Today was tough, but thinking about you made it all better. Can't wait to see you again. I'm counting the hours. I saved every single note. I still have them, in a shoebox under my bed. Sometimes, when the nostalgia for what I thought we had gets too strong, I open the box and read them, and I cry. Because that Ethan died, and I didn't even see it happen. We got married in June of 2013, a simple ceremony at St. Francis Parish, the same church where my grandmother and my mother were married, a family tradition. I wore a dress borrowed from my sister, Lucy, who had gotten married 2 years earlier. It was a little big. We had to pin it in the back, but I felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. Ethan was in a rented navy blue suit with a tie he couldn't figure out how to knot properly. I spent 10 minutes fixing it for him before the ceremony while he sweated with nerves. Relax, I laughed, straightening his tie. Everything's going to be fine. What if I forget my lines? His eyes were wide with fear. You just have to say I do. You can do that, right? He nodded, took a deep breath, and squeezed my hand. Yeah, for you, I can always do that. We were broke. We didn't have our own house, a car, or any savings. The wedding reception was in my mom's backyard, with food made by the neighbors and music playing from a borrowed Bluetooth speaker. But we were happy. At least, I thought we were. The first time I met Margaret, my future mother-in-law, was 3 months after Ethan and I started dating. He took me to meet her for Sunday dinner. Her house was in a modest neighborhood in Red Rock, an old construction with peeling paint and a yard full of chickens. Margaret had been a widow since 2005 when her husband, Walter, died of cirrhosis. I already knew the story. Ethan had told me. His father had been a heavy drinker since his 20s. He would beat his wife, humiliate her, and cheat on her with any woman who looked his way. Margaret endured 30 years of a hellish marriage, raising her son mostly alone while her husband spent all their money on whiskey and other women. When Walter died, I imagined she must have felt relieved, finally free from the man who had destroyed her life. But that's not what happened. Margaret wasn't freed. She was embittered. It was as if all the rage she'd felt for 30 years had nowhere to go after he was gone. As if she needed someone new to hate, to blame, to take out all her suffering on. And that someone became me. From the very first day, I felt her gaze sizing me up, judging me. She squeezed my hand too hard when Ethan introduced us, and the smile she gave me never reached her eyes. So, you're the one, she said, her voice dry. The little school teacher. It's so nice to meet you, Margaret, I said, trying to be friendly. Ethan talks about you all the time. He does he? She looked at her son with an expression I couldn't read. I hope he says nice things. The dinner was tense. Margaret spent the entire time making comments that sounded like compliments, but were thinly veiled criticisms. How nice that you're a teacher, Grace. It's a shame teachers make so little. Ethan will have to work twice as hard to support you. This casserole is good, but I make it differently. I can show you how if you like. My son prefers it my way. You're pretty, I'll give you that. But looks don't last forever. What's important is knowing how to take care of a man. Ethan said nothing. He just ate quietly, as if he couldn't hear a thing. When we left, I asked him if he'd noticed his mom's passive-aggressive remarks. What remarks? He seemed genuinely confused. My mom loved you. That's just how she is, a little blunt. Don't take it personally. I didn't take it personally. I thought it was all in my head, that I was being too sensitive, looking for problems where there were none. That was my first mistake, doubting what I saw with my own eyes. It would be the first of many. Before I continue, I need to ask something of you, the person listening right now. If this story is touching your heart, if you know someone who's been through something similar, or if you just want to keep me company until the end, please leave a comment below telling me what city you're from and what time you're tuning in. I read every single comment, and knowing you're out there gives me the strength to keep sharing. And if you're not already subscribed, now's the time. Click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single story. We post new ones every day, and every story is a life lesson. Now, let me continue telling you how my fairy tale turned into a nightmare. The Ethan I met at the county fair began to disappear, little by little, not all at once, not dramatically. He vanished slowly, like water evaporating in the sun. You don't see it leaving, but one day you look at the glass, and it's empty. In 2014, a year after our wedding, he stopped picking me up from school. "What for, Grace?" he'd say, lying on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You have legs, don't you? You can walk. It's not that far. But you always used to pick me up." That was when we were dating. We're married now. We don't need all that cutesy stuff. I swallowed the hurt. I told myself he was just tired from work, that it was normal for couples to change after marriage. In 2015, he stopped bringing me flowers. "Flowers die in 2 days, Grace. It's a waste of money. We need to save. But they don't have to be store-bought. You used to pick them from the side of the road, remember?" He rolled his eyes. "That was some lovesick kid stuff. I've grown up." In 2016, the note stopped. Writing notes? "Grace, for God's sake. We live together. If I want to tell you something, I'll just say it. I don't need scraps of paper." In 2017, he stopped saying he loved me. "You already know I love you. I don't need to repeat it like a broken record. But you haven't said it in so long." "So what? I married you, didn't I? Isn't that proof enough?" I justified every change, forgave every absence, and swallowed every cold remark because I loved that man, or maybe I loved the memory of the man he once was. I believed that if I were good enough, patient enough, loving enough, he would go back to being the person he used to be. As Ethan pulled away, Margaret moved in. Every space he left empty, she filled. She started showing up at our house every day, without calling, without any warning. She would just appear at the door, early in the morning, sometimes before I'd even left for work. "I came to keep my son company," she'd announce, walking in uninvited, dropping her purse on the sofa, and heading straight for the kitchen. "He works so hard, poor thing. He needs someone to take proper care of him." She'd open my refrigerator and criticize what I bought. "Grace, why do you buy all this fancy stuff? There are only 2 of you. You're wasting my son's money on nonsense." She'd walk into my bedroom without knocking, touching my things. "This face cream is too expensive. All this makeup, what for? You don't need to be all painted up to stay at home." She complained about my clothes, my hair, my weight. "You've put on weight, Grace. You're not taking care of yourself. My son deserves a woman who looks after herself." And the worst part was, Ethan agreed. He always agreed. "Mom's right, Grace. Stop wasting money on that stuff. My mom has a point. You could take better care of yourself. Don't talk to my mom like that. She's only trying to help." I took it all. I always took it. What else could I do? She was my husband's mother, the woman who had suffered for 30 years with a drunk, abusive husband. She deserved compassion, not confrontation. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth was, I was scared. Scared of fighting with Ethan, scared he would choose his mother over me and leave me. Scared of being alone in a town where everyone knows everyone, and everyone talks about everyone else's business. So I stayed quiet, smiled, and pretended everything was fine. And with every day I pretended, a piece of me died inside. It was in 2018 that I finally understood what drove Margaret. I understood the root of her hatred and, in a way, I almost pitied her. It was a Sunday dinner. Ethan had gone to the corner store to buy beer. The 2 of us were left alone in the kitchen. I was washing dishes. She was sitting at the table, drinking coffee. The silence between us was heavy, as it always was. We had nothing to talk about, no common ground, nothing in common except for the man who connected us. Suddenly, without warning, she spoke. "You think you're special, don't you, Grace?" I stopped scrubbing the plate. I looked at her reflection in the window. "What do you mean, Margaret? You think my son really loves you? You think you're different?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. She continued, her voice thick with bitterness. "Men don't love women, Grace. Men use women. They use them until they get tired, and then they throw them away. That's what happened to me, and that's what's going to happen to you." I turned to face her. Her eyes were distant, lost in memories I couldn't see. "My husband used me for 30 years. She took a sip of coffee. 30 years of washing his dirty clothes, cooking his meals, cleaning his messes, and taking his beatings and his cheating. And you know what I got for it? Nothing. He died and left me with a house falling apart and a son who has no idea what his mother went through. I dried my hands on a dish towel and sat down in the chair across from her. You went through a lot, Margaret, I know that. But Ethan isn't Walter. He's different. She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Not yet, but every man turns into his father. You'll see, one day my son will do to you what his father did to me, and you'll remember I warned you. That conversation haunted me for years, because little by little, word by word, she started to be proven right. But what Margaret didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that I wasn't her. I wasn't going to endure 30 years in silence. I wasn't going to let a man destroy me. I just needed the right moment to prove it. The news came the way all bad news does, by surprise, at a moment when you're least prepared. It was September of 2019, a normal Wednesday afternoon, nothing special about it. I was in the teacher's lounge grading papers when my colleague Jenna sat down in the chair next to me. Jenna taught math. We'd known each other since college, had gotten our teaching licenses at the same time, and had worked at the same school for years. She was the closest thing I had to a best friend. Grace. Her voice was strange, low and careful. Can I talk to you about something? I looked up from the papers. Her face was tense. Of course. What's wrong? She glanced around, checking if anyone else was there. The lounge was empty. The other teachers had already left for the day. I consider you a good friend. That's why I'm going to tell you this, because I'd want someone to do the same for me. My heart started to pound. When someone starts a conversation like that, it's never good news. Jenna, just say it. You're scaring me. She took a deep breath and took my hand. Ethan's been seen with another woman in Coyote Springs. The words entered my ears but took a long time to reach my brain, as if they had to break through a thick layer of denial before they could make sense. What? A woman named Heather. She works at the Circle K over there. People are talking, Grace. My cousin lives in Coyote Springs and he told me. He says they're seen together every week. I pulled my hand away. My breathing grew shallow. It must be a mistake, I said, my voice weak and shaky. Ethan works over there. He probably knows a lot of people. It doesn't mean anything. Jenna looked at me with pity, that look that hurts more than any words. My cousin says they hold hands, Grace, that she goes into his apartment, that everyone in town knows about it. The room started to spin. The papers in front of me blurred into a swirl of red and blue ink. I shook my head. No, it can't be. We've been married for 6 years. He wouldn't do this to me. But even as I said it, a voice in the back of my mind whispered, yes, he would. You know he would. All the changes, the distance, all the nights he claimed he was too tired to talk, too tired to touch me, too tired to even look at me. It all made sense now, a horrible, painful sense that I didn't want to accept. Jenna stayed with me until I stopped crying. It took almost an hour. She didn't say anything. She just held my hand and let me fall apart. When I finally pulled myself together, she asked, "What are you going to do?" I wiped my face on the sleeve of my shirt. I took a deep breath. I'm going to ask him. I confronted Ethan that weekend. He got home Friday night, same as always, dropped his duffel bag on the living room floor, and went straight to the fridge for a beer. He didn't even kiss me hello. I waited until he was settled on the couch, had turned on the TV, and gotten comfortable. Then I sat in the armchair across from him and turned the TV off. "Hey, what gives?" he grumbled, annoyed. "I was watching the game. We need to talk. Now. Can't it wait?" No. Something in my tone made him pause and really look at me. Maybe for the first time in months. "Okay. Talk." I swallowed hard. My hands were sweating. "Who's Heather?" I saw his body tense. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I'd known this man for 8 years. I knew how to read his every move. "Heather?" He shrugged, a little too casually to be real. "She works at the Circle K near the farm." "Why?" "People are saying you're seeing her. That you've been seen holding hands." "What people? People from Coyote Springs?" "Gossip, Grace. People with nothing better to do." "Are you really going to believe gossip over me?" "So it's not true?" He stood up, walked over to me, and held my face in his hands, a gesture he hadn't made in years. "Grace, look at me." His eyes were steady, unwavering. "I swear on my mother's life it's a lie. I have nothing to do with that woman. She's just an acquaintance." I wanted so badly to believe him. My heart was begging to believe him. "You swear?" "I swear on everything that's holy." I nodded. I let him hug me. I smelled his cologne, a different one than he usually wore. Liar, the voice in my head whispered. He's lying. But I pretended not to hear it. I pretended to believe him. And I started my investigation in silence. It took me 2 months to work up the courage to go to Coyote Springs. 2 months of sleepless nights, of checking his phone while he slept, of analyzing every word he said for signs of a lie. I found no evidence on his phone. Ethan was careful. He deleted messages, used apps where conversations disappeared. But the absence of proof didn't mean innocence. It meant he was smart. In November of 2019, I made my move. I told Ethan I was going to visit a cousin in Phoenix for the weekend. I lied about the date, telling him I'd be gone a weekend when he was scheduled to work. Instead, I took an early morning bus to Coyote Springs. The town was small, smaller than Red Rock. Finding the Circle K was easy. I asked the first person I saw at the bus station. I stood across the street, hiding behind a tree, and watched. It was a simple storefront, red and white, with a glass door. I could see the woman at the counter. Heather. She was younger than me, maybe 25. Pretty in a natural way, no heavy makeup, no fuss. Straight brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, a slender frame, and an easy smile for every customer who came in. I waited there for hours, buying time with coffee from a shop next door, pretending to wait for someone. At 6 p.m., my heart stopped. Ethan pulled up, parking his motorcycle in front of the Circle K. He took off his helmet, ran a hand through his hair in the reflection of the glass door, and went inside. I was frozen, unable to move, as if my feet had grown roots into the pavement. 5 minutes later, he came out, and Heather came out with him. I saw her lock the door to the store. I saw him take her hand. I saw them smile at each other like two teenagers in love. They walked hand in hand to an apartment building 2 blocks away, a simple 3-story building. I saw them go inside. I saw the light on the second floor turn on. And I just stood there on the street, crying silently for 2 hours. Crying for myself, for the fool who believed his oaths, for the woman who had spent 6 years building a life with a liar, the apartment I helped pay for, the man who swore on his mother's life that it was all a lie. I took the last bus back to Red Rock. I didn't say a word when I got home the next day. Ethan asked how my visit with my cousin was. I said it was fine. He didn't notice I was lying because he was too busy with his own lies to pay attention to mine. And it was right then, sitting in my living room, looking at the man who had destroyed my trust, that I began to make my plan. I could have confronted Ethan right then and there. I could have screamed, cried, demanded an explanation. I could have called my family, exposed his affair to everyone, caused a scene that the whole town would talk about for weeks. But I didn't. You know why? Because a fool screams. A smart woman plans. I knew that if I confronted him then, he would deny it, make excuses, cry, beg for forgiveness, and promise it would never happen again. And I, the lovesick fool I was, might have believed him again. No, I needed more than just catching him in the act. I needed security, independence, an exit strategy so well constructed that when I left, it would be for good. And that's what I spent the next several years doing. In January of 2020, I made an appointment with a lawyer in Phoenix. I chose a different city on purpose. In Red Rock, everyone knows everyone. If I'd sought out a local lawyer, the whole town would have known I was considering a divorce within a week. The lawyer's name was Fernanda Gutierrez, a small office downtown, but with impressive diplomas on the wall and a reputation for never losing a case. "Sit down, Grace," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me what's going on." I told her everything, the affair, the humiliation, the years of a deteriorating marriage. I cried several times during the story. She offered me tissues and water but never interrupted. When I finished, she folded her arms and looked at me seriously. "I'm going to be honest with you. From a legal standpoint, the divorce will be straightforward. You have no children, no house in your name, no significant assets to divide. If you both agree to separate, it's just a matter of signing the papers. And if he doesn't agree, it gets a little more complicated, but not by much. Do you have proof of the affair?" I shook my head. I saw it with my own eyes, but I don't have photos, nothing documented. She picked up a pen and jotted something down. "First thing, start documenting. Photos, videos, texts, witnesses, anything you can get. The affair doesn't prevent the divorce from happening, but it helps when it comes to negotiation. I nodded, absorbing every word. Second thing, you need financial security. You said you're a tenured teacher. That's good. It means you have your own income, but you need to start saving. Open an account at a different bank, one your husband doesn't know about, and start depositing money every month. The more you have saved, the easier it will be to start over. How long do you think I'll need? She thought for a moment. Depends on how much you can save. I'd recommend at least 2 years of preparation. It sounds like a long time, but it goes by fast, and you'll be glad you waited. I left Fernanda's office with a plan, a long-term plan that required patience, discipline, and, above all, silence. In the following months, I began to execute it. I opened a savings account at a bank Ethan didn't use, choosing a branch in Phoenix to avoid any risk of running into someone I knew. Every month, I deposited what I could, $100, sometimes $200. It wasn't much, but it was consistent. Ethan never noticed. He thought I earned less than I actually did. From the beginning of our marriage, I had let him believe a lie about my salary. It wasn't planned. It was just a casual comment I'd made once and never corrected. Now that lie was saving me. While I was saving money, I also started digging deeper, not just into the affair. I already knew about that. I started researching Ethan's family, his past, the secrets they kept, and that's when I found the bombshell. Walter, Ethan's father, had died in 2005. I knew that. What I didn't know was that before he died, he had owned a large plot of land in Red Rock, near the center of town, an inheritance from his grandfather. When Walter died, Margaret inherited everything, but legally, half of that land belonged to Ethan, the only child. It turned out that in 2010, Margaret had sold that land. She sold it for $200,000 and didn't share a dime with Ethan. In fact, she did something worse. She needed his signature to complete the sale, since he was an heir. But instead of asking for his authorization, she simply forged his signature. A crime. Forgery of a public document. Embezzlement. Crimes that could lead to prison. And Ethan had no idea. He was so dominated by his mother, so used to accepting everything she said without question, that he never asked what happened to his father's inheritance. But I found out. It was by accident, really. I was at the county recorder's office in Red Rock dealing with a school matter when I overheard 2 clerks talking. Remember that land sale for Walter Miller? The one near downtown? I remember. The widow sold it to some developer from out of state, right? Yeah, but I was looking through the old files the other day, and you should see the paperwork. The son's signature is all wrong. Looks like a forgery. Seriously? And nobody ever contested it? Doesn't look like it. The son probably doesn't even know. I stood there frozen, pretending to look for something in my purse while I soaked up every word. After they left, I went to the records department. I asked to see the documentation for the sale, pretending to be a relative interested in land in the area. The clerk didn't even blink. In a small town, everyone's related to everyone. And there it was, the deed of sale, with Ethan's signature clearly forged. Anyone who knew his handwriting would have seen the difference. I requested copies of everything, put them in a yellow manila folder, and continued to wait. In the years that followed, I hired a private forensic document examiner. I paid him with the money I was saving. He analyzed the signatures, compared them with authentic documents I managed to get, and issued an official report confirming the forgery. That yellow folder became my secret weapon, my guarantee that when the time came, I wouldn't be leaving empty-handed. While I was planning my freedom, life at home kept getting worse. In March of 2020, the pandemic hit. Ethan, who used to work in Coyote Springs during the week, started staying home. I thought the forced proximity might bring us closer. I was wrong. He spent all day on his phone, talking to Heather. I knew it. Sometimes he'd go out into the backyard, thinking I couldn't hear him, and I'd listen to him whisper, "I love you," into the phone. I pretended not to notice. It was as if he wanted me to find out, to confront him, to give him an excuse to leave. But I wouldn't give him one. I kept pretending I didn't see, didn't hear, that everything was fine. Every whispered "I love you" to his phone was a knife in my chest, but I used the pain as fuel, as a reminder of why I was doing all this. And Margaret would visit almost every day, even during lockdown. To keep him company, she'd say. In reality, she came to torture me. "Grace, you've gained weight," She'd look me up and down, her nose wrinkled in disgust. "You look like a cow. No wonder my son doesn't look at you anymore." Ethan would be in the living room, listening. He never said a word in my defense. He just laughed. "Grace, this food is bland." She'd push her plate away. "I don't know how my son puts up with it. In my day, a woman who couldn't cook got a good smack." Ethan would remain silent, sometimes even agreeing. "Grace, why don't you fix yourself up anymore? Do you want my son to look for beauty elsewhere?" And I swallowed it all. I saved it up. I waited. Every humiliation went to the same place inside me, that dark place where I stored my rage, my resentment, my thirst for justice. One day, I would open that place up, and they would see what happens when you underestimate a woman who seems meek. A lion that doesn't roar isn't tame, it's just waiting for the right time to attack. In August of 2024, after nearly 5 years of silent planning, life threw me a curveball. My period was late. At first, I didn't think much of it. My cycle had always been irregular, especially after I turned 35. A week or two late was common. But when a month went by, I started to suspect. I bought a pregnancy test from a pharmacy on a trip to Phoenix. I took it in the restroom of the bus station before heading back. 2 lines. Positive. I stared at that result for nearly 10 minutes, my hands shaking, my heart racing, a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't process. I was 37. I had practically given up on the idea of being a mother. Ethan had always said he didn't want kids. They were too expensive. They would complicate his life. They were too much work. And I, like an idiot, had accepted it. I had swallowed that dream along with all the others. But now, holding that positive test, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe this would change things. Maybe a child would make Ethan go back to being the man I first met. Maybe we could start over, build a family, finally be happy. What a fool. After everything I knew, after all the evidence I had collected, there was still a part of me that wanted to believe, that clung to the possibility of a happy ending. I waited a week to tell Ethan. I wanted to prepare the moment, to do something special. I wanted the news to be delivered in the best way possible. I chose a Saturday morning. I woke up early. I made his favorite breakfast: pancakes with real maple syrup, strong black coffee, fresh squeezed orange juice. I set the table carefully, placing a wildflower I'd picked from the yard in a small vase in the center. It was the first time in years I had done anything like that, the first time I had tried to create a romantic moment, the first time I had invested in our dying relationship. Ethan came downstairs for breakfast, still groggy, his hair a mess, his face creased from sleep. "What's all this?" He looked at the table suspiciously. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything. I just wanted to have a special breakfast today." He sat down, grabbed a pancake, and started eating, his eyes glued to his phone, as always. I waited until he finished. I took a deep breath. My hands were sweating under the table. "Ethan, I have something to tell you." He didn't even look up from his phone, his thumb scrolling endlessly down some feed I couldn't see. "Go ahead." "I'm pregnant." His thumb stopped. The phone slowly lowered. His eyes met mine. For a second that seemed to last an eternity, I saw something flash across his face. Surprise, maybe, or fear, or both. Then rage took over. "What? Pregnant?" My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "About 2 months." He slammed his phone down on the table. The device hit his plate, nearly knocking over his coffee mug. "You did this on purpose, didn't you?" I shrank back in my chair, startled by his outburst. "Ethan, what are you talking about? On purpose?" He shot up from his chair, which clattered backward onto the floor. "To trap me, to tie me to this marriage. We've been married for 11 years, Ethan. What do you mean, trap you?" "Shut up!" The shout echoed through the kitchen. I felt the blood drain from my face. In all our fights, he had never screamed like that. He had never told me to shut up with so much rage, so much contempt. "I don't want a kid." He paced back and forth, his hands on his head, like a caged animal. "And especially not with you." The words hit me like a slap. "Especially not with you." What did that even mean? I stood up from the table, my legs trembling so badly I could barely stand. "What do you mean?" "Especially not with me." He stopped pacing. He looked at me, and then something in his face changed. The veil dropped. The mask he had worn for years, that facade of a tired but devoted husband, dissolved, And I saw the real Ethan for the first time. Grace. His voice was calm now, almost cold. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't loved you in a long time. Tears began to stream down my face, hot, heavy, unstoppable. I don't love you, he repeated, as if savoring the words. I'm with you for convenience. You pay half the bills, you clean the house, you cook, you're a good employee. But love? He laughed, a cruel laugh, just like his mother's. That died years ago. I tried to breathe, to think, to understand how the conversation had escalated so quickly. Does Heather know you talk about me like this? His eyes widened. He hadn't expected me to know her name. Don't look at me like that. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my shirt. I know everything, Ethan. I've known for 5 years. I know about the apartment. I know about you holding hands. I know about the I love you's you whisper on the phone when you think I'm not listening. His face went through a series of expressions in seconds: surprise, shame, anger, and finally, relief. Relief, as if the fact that I knew freed him from having to pretend anymore. Then you already know I love her, not you. He crossed his arms, facing me down. Good. That makes this easier. Margaret arrived in the early afternoon. Ethan had called her, told her about the pregnancy. I heard the conversation from the bedroom where I had locked myself in, crying. I heard him say, "Mom, get over here. I need you." I heard her voice on the other end of the line, sharp and poisonous, promising to be there soon. When the front door slammed shut, I knew it was her. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and went downstairs. Margaret was sitting on my living room sofa as if it were her throne, legs crossed, purse in her lap, her eyes following me as I descended the stairs. "So, you got yourself pregnant, did you?" Her voice dripped with contempt. How clever. Trapping my son with a baby bump. I stood by the window, keeping my distance. "Margaret, I didn't trap anyone. It just happened." "It just happened?" She stood up abruptly, her eyes flashing. "You did it on purpose. I always knew you were a gold digger." Ethan appeared from the kitchen, a beer in his hand. He stood beside his mother, the two of them a united front against me, just as they had always been. I looked at them, the man who had sworn to love me until death, now leaning against the wall, sipping a beer while his mother attacked me, the bitter old woman who had spent 11 years destroying my self-esteem, my confidence, my will to live. And I felt something shift inside me, something that had been waiting for this very moment for 5 years. Margaret continued, "My son doesn't want this child, and neither do I. You're going to get an abortion." My heart stopped. "What?" Ethan stepped forward, his expression hard. "That's right, Grace. Get an abortion. I don't want a child with you. If you have this baby, I'm leaving. I'll go live with Heather. You'll raise it alone." Margaret smiled, a poisonous, satisfied smile. "Do what he says. It's for the best." The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I was standing there, in my own living room, listening to my husband and his mother order me to kill my child, the child I had dreamed of my whole life, the child growing inside me at that very moment. The tears streamed down my face, uncontrollable, endless, carrying the weight of 11 years of humiliation, of silence, of swallowing my pride, thinking it was love. But then, something happened. I remembered the notes saved in the shoebox. I remembered the wildflowers, the vows of love from the man who brought a book of poetry on a first date. That man was dead, and I had no reason to cry over a corpse anymore. I wiped the tears away with the back of my hand, took a deep breath, and smiled. "Don't worry," I said. My voice was steady, so steady it surprised even me. "This baby won't have your last name." I saw the confusion on Ethan's face. The beer bottle paused on its way to his lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" I walked over to my purse in the corner, reached inside, and pulled out the yellow manila folder, the folder I had been carrying with me for months, waiting for the right moment. The moment had arrived. "Ethan, do you know what happened to your father's land?" I kept my voice calm, almost casual. "The plot near downtown that was worth a fortune." He looked at me, confused, and exchanged a quick glance with his mother. "My mom sold it to pay off my dad's debts." "Why?" "That's not exactly what happened." I opened the folder, took out the documents, and spread them on the coffee table. "Your mother sold the land for $200,000 in 2010, but half of that money was legally yours. You were an heir. She needed your signature to sell it." Margaret went pale. I watched the color drain from her face like water down a sink. She didn't ask for your signature, Ethan. I picked up the deed and held it out to him. She forged it. Look right here. Is this your handwriting? Is this your signature? Ethan took the document, his hands shaking. I saw his eyes scan the page, the forged signature, the handwriting that was clearly not his. That's a crime, I continued, picking up the expert's report. Forgery of a public document, embezzlement. Your mother stole $100,000 from you, and you didn't even know. This report confirms it. Any judge will accept it. Ethan looked up, his eyes wide, and stared at his mother. Mom, is this true? Margaret started to cry. Tears I knew were born of fear, not remorse. Son, I can explain, she whimpered. I needed the money. You wouldn't have known what to do with it. I did it for us. You robbed me. I had never seen Ethan so furious, not even when he had screamed at me that morning. This rage was different, deeper, more visceral. The rage of someone who discovers they've been betrayed by their own mother. Margaret reached out, trying to touch his arm. Son, please, forgive me. I did it for us. Don't touch me! He recoiled as if her touch were poison. I calmly gathered the documents back into the folder. There's more, Ethan. I looked at him. He was devastated, and I felt no pity. I've spent 5 years gathering evidence of the forgery, of your affairs photos, texts, witnesses. My lawyer, Fernanda, already has everything. The divorce papers have been filed. He turned to me, his eyes wide with desperation. Grace, wait. Can we just... You told me to abort my child. I took a step toward the door. You said you don't love me, that you're with me for convenience. Well, I smiled. The convenience is over. I grabbed my purse and headed for the exit. And about your mother's crime. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I have 2 options. I can turn all this over to the police, and she goes to jail. Or she can pay me the $100,000 she stole from you. With interest and inflation, that's about $150,000 today. And I keep my mouth shut. Margaret let out a loud sob. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'd better start finding it. I gave her one last look. You have 6 months. If you don't pay, you'll face the consequences. The statute of limitations is running out, but we're still within the window. Ethan stumbled toward me, his face a mask of ruin. Grace, for the love of God, can we just talk? I messed up. I know I messed up, but you can't do this to my mom. I'll do anything. Anything. I looked at the man I had loved for 13 years, the man who had made me believe in fairy tales, and then ripped out every page of the book. Anything? I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Then do this. Get out of my way. I opened the door and walked out. The taxi was already waiting at the corner. I had called it before the confrontation, knowing I would need a quick getaway. I got in, gave the driver my sister Lucy's address, and I didn't look back. The entire ride, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline that had sustained me during the confrontation was wearing off, and in its place was a vast emptiness. It was over. 11 years of marriage, 13 years of a relationship, a whole life of dreams built around that man. It had all ended in less than an hour, and the strangest thing was, I wasn't sad. I was relieved. Lucy met me at the door with no questions asked. She saw my face, saw the suitcase I had packed in a hurry, and just opened her arms. Come on in, sis. The guest room is all made up for you. It was only when I sat on the bed, alone in the silence of that spare room, that I finally, truly cried. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. It was over. I was free. And now, I could finally start to live. The next few days were a blur. Ethan called me 200 times in the first week. I'm not exaggerating. I counted every missed call. He sent texts begging for forgiveness, voicemails where he was crying, messages filled with promises I knew he wouldn't keep. Grace, come back. Let's talk. I love you. I always loved you. Heather means nothing. I'll leave her. I already ended it. Please come home. For the love of God, don't do this to my mom. It'll kill her. I didn't answer a single one. Every message that came in, I read once and deleted. I didn't need his words anymore. I didn't need his lies. On the 3rd day, he showed up at Lucy's house. He honked his horn outside, yelled my name, and caused a scene on the street that probably became the talk of half the town. Lucy went out with a broom in her hand. "Ethan, you either get off my property right now or I'm calling the cops. And when they get here, I'll tell them about the forgery too. You want that?" He left. He didn't come back. A week after the confrontation, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Margaret. "Grace." Her voice was different, weak, defeated. "I need to talk to you." I almost hung up. My finger hovered over the red button for several seconds. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and I wanted to hear what that woman had to say. "Go on." "I know I was wrong. I know I did terrible things to you all those years, and what I did with Ethan's money, it was wrong. I know it was." I stayed silent, waiting. "But I'm old, Grace. I'm not healthy anymore. I don't have the strength. If you turn me into the police, I'll die in prison." I felt something tighten in my chest. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. Recognition that this woman, despite everything she had done, was a human being. A human being who had suffered, who had made terrible choices, and who was now reaping what she had sown. "I don't want you to go to prison, Margaret," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. "I want what's fair, $150,000. It's the money that was rightfully Ethan's, adjusted for today. You stole from him, not me." "I don't have that money." "Then you'll have to find it." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll sell the house," she finally choked out. "It's all I have. I'll sell it and borrow what I can." "You have 6 months." "I know," she sniffled. "Thank you for not going straight to the police." I hung up without another word. While I waited for Margaret's money, I focused on the divorce. Fernanda, my lawyer, was flawless. She handled the entire process with an efficiency that amazed me. Every document, every deadline, every detail was handled with surgical precision. Ethan tried to fight it at first. When he was served with the divorce papers, he called me, frantic. "You can't do this. We've been married for 11 years. 11 years you spent cheating on me and humiliating me. Yes, I can. I'll fight you in court. I'll demand half of everything." "You can try." My voice was ice. "Fernanda already explained that we have no assets to divide. The house is rented. The car is financed in your name. I have nothing in my name. You'll just be wasting money on a lawyer. And my mom's money. If she pays you, I'm entitled to half of it." I laughed. A genuine laugh. "Ethan, your mother is paying me so I don't report her for a felony. That's not an inheritance. It's not a gift. It's restitution for a crime. You're not entitled to anything." He fell silent, and I knew I had won. In the end, Ethan didn't contest the divorce. Maybe because he knew he would lose. Maybe because he was too busy trying to keep his mother out of jail. Or maybe because he simply didn't care anymore. The process moved at record speed. In March of 2025, I received notice that the divorce was finalized. I was officially free. During those months of waiting, my pregnancy progressed. My belly grew, the baby kicked, and every movement reminded me why I had done all this. It wasn't just for me. It was for my child, for the life I was going to give him. I had my prenatal checkups in Phoenix with an OB/GYN Lucy recommended. Dr. Evans was kind, patient, and never once judged me for being a single mother. "Your baby is healthy, Grace," she'd say, pointing to the grainy image on the ultrasound screen. "Strong heartbeat, developing perfectly. You're doing a great job." I cried every time I heard that rhythmic, rapid sound of his heart. It was the soundtrack to my new life. In January of 2025, Margaret made the first payment, $75,000, wired to the account Fernanda had designated. The money came from the sale of her house, the same house where she'd raised Ethan, where she'd lived for decades. I heard she went to live with a sister in California. She never came back to Red Rock. I didn't feel sorry for her. She reaped what she sowed. The second payment came in March, another $50,000. Money borrowed from relatives, I heard through town gossip. The third and final payment came in April. The remaining $25,000, transferred on the very day my son was born. A coincidence, perhaps, or maybe the universe has a poetic sense of timing. I signed a legal agreement, drafted by Fernanda, stating that I would not press charges against Margaret for the forgery. She signed it too, acknowledging her crime in writing. I kept that document, locked away safely, just in case she ever tried anything in the future. But I knew she wouldn't. Margaret was broken. She had lost her house, her money, and most importantly, her son. Ethan never spoke to her again after discovering the theft. I heard he blamed her for everything, for the failed marriage, the lost money, the life that had fallen apart. Ironic, isn't it? She spent years poisoning him against me, and in the end, she was the one he abandoned. My son was born on an April morning in 2025. 23 hours of labor, a pain I never knew could exist, moments when I thought I couldn't do it. But I did. At 7:42 a.m., I heard his first cry, a strong, indignant cry, full of life. The nurse placed him on my chest, red, wrinkled, his eyes still squeezed shut. He was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "It's a boy," the doctor smiled. 7 pounds, 10 ounces. Perfectly healthy. I looked at my son, the miracle who had grown inside me for 9 months, who had survived everything, the stress, the anger, the fear. "Leo," I whispered, the name I had chosen months before. Leo Michael Grace. No father's last name. No last name of the family that told me to kill him. Just mine. Just ours. Lucy was in the waiting room. When the nurse called her in, she came running, her eyes full of tears. "Let me see my nephew." I placed Leo in her arms. She cried. I cried. Even the nurse cried. "He's perfect, Grace," Lucy said, kissing his forehead. "You are the strongest woman I know." I didn't feel strong. I felt tired, sore, and terrified of the responsibility ahead. But looking at my son, sleeping in my sister's arms, I knew I would be okay. I had to be. Ethan asked to see Leo when the baby was a month old. I thought long and hard before agreeing. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep him away, to make him suffer without ever knowing his son. But I wasn't Margaret. I wouldn't use my child as a weapon. We arranged a meeting at Lucy's house, with her present. I didn't want to be alone with him. He agreed to the terms. He arrived on time, knocked, and waited to be let in. He looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, his beard unshaven. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't reply, just gestured to the bassinet where Leo was sleeping. Ethan approached slowly, looked down at the baby for a long moment, and then he did something I didn't expect. He wept, not a quiet, controlled cry, but a real, racking sob, with thick tears rolling down his face. "He's beautiful," he whispered between sobs. "He looks just like you." I stood in silence. I didn't know what to say. He reached out a hesitant hand and touched Leo's tiny fist. The baby stirred but didn't wake. "I regret it," Ethan said, looking at me, his eyes red. "All of it. How I treated you, what I said, what I did. If I could go back." "But you can't," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. "What's done is done." He nodded, wiping his face on his sleeve. "I want to be a father, Grace. I know I don't deserve it. I know I ruined everything, but that little boy is my son. I want to be a part of his life." I thought about his words, about the empty promises he'd made over the years, the lies, the betrayals, the humiliations. But I also thought about Leo, about his right to know his father, about the decision that wasn't mine alone to make for him. "You can visit him," I said finally. "You can be a father. You can be part of his life. But you and I looked him straight in the eye, "you and I are over. Forever." He nodded, the pain on his face evident. "I understand, and if you ever hurt my son in any way, if you disappoint him, if you disappear, if you do to him what you did to me, I will make sure you never see him again. Understood?" "Understood." He stayed a few more minutes, watching his son sleep. Then he said goodbye and left. I later found out that Heather had left him. When she discovered he was broke, living in a rented room, with no mother to support him and no wife to exploit, she disappeared. True love. No, I didn't take pleasure in his misfortune. I didn't feel joy. Just a hollow acknowledgement that life has a strange way of balancing the scales. More than a year has passed since that day in the living room. More than a year since I wiped away my tears, smiled, and destroyed the life of the man who told me to kill my son. A lot has changed. With Margaret's money, the $150,000 she paid me to stay out of jail, plus the savings I had accumulated for 5 years, I was able to buy a house. A small, simple house, but it's mine. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a nice kitchen, and a backyard with a peach tree that was already there when I moved in. It's 3 blocks from the school where I teach, so I can walk to work. Leo is 8 months old now. He smiles all the time. He has my almond-shaped brown eyes and a way of looking at the world that seems full of wonder. Everyone says he's my spitting image. I proudly agree. Mornings are my favorite part of the day. I wake up at 5:30, before the sun is up. I make coffee in a percolator, the way my grandmother used to. The smell fills the whole house, and it feels like a hug. I take my mug out to the porch and sit in the rocking chair I bought at a flea market. From there, I watch the sky change color, from deep blue to orange, pink, and gold. Sometimes Leo wakes up, and I bring him out onto my lap. We just sit there, the two of us, watching the sunrise over Red Rock. I never imagined peace could be this simple. I still teach at the public school. Same kids, same classrooms, same challenges. But now I approach my job differently. Before, work was an escape, a place I ran to so I wouldn't have to face the reality of my marriage. Now, it's a choice. I do it because I love it, because I believe in it, because I know I'm making a difference in those kids' lives. My colleagues have noticed the change. Grace, you're different. Jenna told me one day during recess. Lighter, more, you. I smiled. She was right. I was more me, for the first time in a very long time. Ethan visits Leo twice a month, sometimes 3 times, depending on his work schedule. He got a job on a smaller farm, right here in Red Rock. It pays less than he used to make, but it's enough. He lives in a small 1-bedroom apartment downtown. When he comes to see his son, it's always at my house, with Lucy or a neighbor nearby. I don't trust him enough to leave them alone, but I have to admit, he's trying. He never mentions Heather again, never talks about getting back together, never makes promises he can't keep. He just comes, plays with Leo, sometimes changes a diaper, and leaves. I don't know if he's really changed or if he's just doing the bare minimum to keep access to his son, and honestly, I don't care anymore. What matters is that Leo has a father who is present, however imperfect, and that choice is his to make, not mine. Sometimes at night, after Leo is asleep, I open the shoebox, the one that holds the notes Ethan used to give me when we were young and in love. The papers are yellowed with age, with his handwriting that I once knew so well. Grace, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Can't wait to see you again. I'm counting the hours. I love you more than words can say. I read each one, and I cry. I don't cry out of nostalgia or regret. I cry for the woman I used to be, for the naive girl who believed every word, for the 24-year-old who met a man at a county fair and thought she had found the love of her life. That Grace died sometime in the last 11 years. She died slowly, suffocated by the humiliations, the betrayals, the pain of living with someone who didn't love her. But in her place, another woman was born, a stronger, wiser, more whole Grace. And this Grace, the one I am now, wouldn't trade the life she has for anything. Last month, I ran into Margaret at a grocery store in Phoenix. I was visiting for the weekend, and by chance, we crossed paths in the cleaning supplies aisle. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She gripped her shopping cart tightly, as if needing it for support. Grace. Margaret. We just stood there, looking at each other for what felt like an eternity. She was different, older, thinner, more stooped. Her hair had gone completely white, and her hands trembled. "How are you?" she asked, her voice hesitant. "I'm good," I replied. "Very good, actually." "And the baby?" "Leo. He's wonderful, healthy, happy. He smiles all the time." I saw something flash in her eyes, pain, maybe, or regret. "I'm so sorry," she said suddenly, "for everything, for how I treated you, for what I said, for what I did." I looked at the woman who had spent 11 years trying to destroy me, who had called me a gold digger, incompetent, unworthy of her son, and I didn't feel rage. I felt pity. "I accept your apology, Margaret," I said, and it was true. But accepting doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean everything is okay. "I know." She looked down. "I know it's not. You suffered a lot in your life. I understand that now. But you chose to pass that suffering on instead of breaking the cycle. You chose to hurt me because you had been hurt. And that—" I took a deep breath. "That wasn't fair." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "You can see your grandson one day," I added. "If Ethan wants to bring him, I won't stop it. But you and I shook my head. "We don't have anything to build." "I understand," she whispered. I nodded, pushed my cart into the next aisle, and didn't look back. In my front yard, where the Arizona desert stretches out so close you can almost feel the wind on the earth, I planted a new peach tree. It's still small, barely provides any shade. But every day I water it. I care for it. I talk to it like my grandmother used to talk to her plants. Grow strong, I tell it. Grow tall. One day you'll bear fruit. It's silly, I know, talking to a plant. But there's something about the ritual that calms me. Something that reminds me that growth takes time, that beautiful things start small and fragile. Like me. Like Leo. Like the new life we're building. One day, when my son is big, he'll sit under that peach tree and eat the fruit it bears. And I'll tell him that I planted it the year he was born, the year his mother was reborn too. Last night, Leo woke up crying at 3 a.m. I went to his crib, picked him up, and rocked him until he calmed down. The moonlight streamed through the window, bathing the room in a soft glow. I looked at his face, eyes closed, long lashes, lips puckered in a dream, and I thought about everything I had gone through to get here, the years of humiliation, the nights spent crying in the bathroom, the moment my husband told me to kill my son. It hurt to remember. It still hurts. But I also remembered the strength I found, the courage to prepare in silence, the determination to refuse a life I didn't deserve. "You will never go through what I went through," I whispered to Leo, who was already fast asleep again. "I promise you that. It's a mother's promise, sacred, eternal, unbreakable, and I will keep it." Today, I'm 37 years old. I have a healthy son, a house of my own, and a peace I haven't felt in over a decade. There's still some of Margaret's money in the bank, an emergency fund. The rest I invested in the house, in furniture, in diapers, in everything Leo needs. I still teach. I still water my peach tree. I still drink coffee on the porch every morning, watching the sun rise over Red Rock, and I'm still learning. I've learned that real love doesn't demand an abortion. It doesn't humiliate. It doesn't betray. It doesn't choose a mother over a wife. I've learned that a woman who prepares in silence isn't a coward. She's a strategist. I've learned that pain can be fuel, if you know how to use it. And most of all, I've learned that you can always start over. No matter how many years you've lost, no matter how much you've suffered, no matter how much you thought it was too late, it's never too late. My grandmother used to say that the desert wind carries everything away, the sorrows, the sadness, the loves that didn't work out. Last week, I took Leo to see the desert. We sat in the sand, our bare feet sinking in, and looked out at the infinite horizon. I picked a wildflower, a white desert marigold, just like the ones Ethan used to bring me, and I let it go. "Go," I whispered, watching the flower get caught in the current of air. "Take the pain, take the sorrow, take everything that no longer serves me." Leo babbled something, reaching his tiny hands toward the sky. I laughed and hugged him tighter. "See the flower?" I pointed. "It's going up to the sky," just like Grandma said. He didn't understand, of course. He's only 8 months old. But one day, he will. One day, I'll tell him this whole story. I'll tell him about the man who asked me to kill him, about the grandmother who supported it, and about the mother who refused. And I'll tell him that he, Leo, was the reason for all of it. The reason I found strength when I thought I had none left. The reason I fought when I wanted to give up. The reason I was reborn when I was nearly dead inside. My son was my salvation, and I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. Sometimes, late at night, when Leo is asleep and the house is quiet, I think about the Ethan I met back in 2011. That gentle man who brought a book of poetry on a first date, who wrote little notes and left them in my purse, who looked at me as if I were the most precious thing in the world. I wonder where he went when he died, and if he ever really existed at all. And then I close the shoebox, I look at the baby monitor at my sleeping son, and I know it doesn't matter anymore. The past is a ghost. My future is here, breathing softly in the next room, and for the first time in a very long time, I am not afraid of tomorrow.